Oh, yo, internet, what's happening? Welcome back. You interrupted me. Trying to do some CAD work. Apparently, I gotta redesign my thought process on this F150 Coyote Swap with the transmission cross member, but that's not what this video is about. It's about we got it. The ship has landed. We got a drivetrain, and being that it's still 100 plus degrees in October, I'm sitting in the shop here talking to you about it, but let's go take a peek, look at it, and I'll give you a quick rundown on it. Ooh, yeah. So these are actually out of the same vehicle. Stock numbers are the same. I'll tell you a little more story about it back inside, but here we go. F150 variety with the 6R, first gen, of course. And the yard I got it from was called B&R Wrecking. They have a lot of different yards throughout the West Coast. Mainly this one in Gilbert they just acquired from American Auto Recycling, or I think that's what it's called. But yeah, that's the name. And yeah, so I liked the fact that they showed you the compression numbers. You can see the coil bolts are still loose, and I'm glad I got one from Arizona because the manifolds aren't rusty like I found on eBay. It's really hard to find anything from the Rust Belt with decent manifolds. And you know, we got our torque converter in there, and they were kind enough to only cut certain things off of here and not the harness itself, I hope. I don't know what this is. I think that's, yeah, it's another end of a oxygen sensor. But yeah, so I'm definitely gonna replace this. I've been bitten by this tease, you know, on the channel way too many times. I got an alternator sitting in the shed. Actually, I have a starter as well. Sweet, we got the accessories for the tensioners and pulley for the AC, so I won't have to buy those like I do with the Mustangs when we swap those, and get to save a few $100 with an engine harness. And you know, one thing I didn't mention in the videos is the fuel system. Definitely not using those lines. But we got a flex plate and a mid plate, which is sweet because I did have one laying around, but I wasn't sure if it'd work with the 6R, and yada yada yada. So I'm gonna get this thing apart later. I got a gear swap to do on a S197 for a customer, but this thing hang out, and we'll get this thing in the shop in instant time for you. So let's go into the future. Before we get into the engine and bring it in here, it's kind of an interesting little story of getting this drivetrain. Was the fact that I found this like franchise of yards on eBay, B&R Auto Wrecking, and they seem to have really good deals. I really like people that have, you know, best offers listed on their listings, and noticed a few engines that I liked, and they were in Oregon, and those aren't like exactly Rust Belt, so the manifolds look good and that stuff, and like they had the engine harnesses and decent prices to begin with. And I noticed, I was like, oh, some of these locations that they have were like in Gilbert, Arizona or Tucson. I'm looking them up, and then I couldn't find the yards on Google, so I was like, what the heck? So I saved it in my eBay list, blah blah blah. Next day I noticed, oh man, the Trans that I wanted, that one said it was sold. So I'm like, a little frantic, but I'm like, you know, there's a lot of them out there. But I went on their website, the B&R Wrecking, looked up that stock number. So if you ever want like stuff out of the same truck that's out of yard, look up the stock number. This one was YND 144. And on their actual website, B&R Wrecking, they still listed the transmission and they still listed the engine. And on their own website, they had their own make offer. Like, it's a really cool process where you put an offer, and you can add it to your cart at that price, and then you pay for it, and then someone approves it. Now, they approved that one so fast, like within 12 minutes. I wish I would have gotten it for less, but it is what it is. They do charge core, but I feel like they factor that in their price, so I didn't have a core to give them. I was going to give them a 3650 I just took out of the Fox, maybe, but I can get more than $75, I think, for a grinding 30 or 3650. Anyway, so out the door, picked up in Gilbert, Arizona. I got that drivetrain with transmission, engine harnesses, and what you saw there for $3,800, just a little over $3,800. Now the compression, they don't really tell me the miles, but I'm looking at in a few next clips here at the VIN to see what the latest mileage was on the Carfax, but they show the compression across the board. It was 160 to 180 pounds on all cylinders. Perfect. You know, that's more of an indicator than mileage. Than anything really. You could have, you know, a 40,000 mile engine and have one dead cylinder, you know, mileages and everything. So we'll get it in here and see what it's all about, more so on an engine stand and where it's a little more comfortable instead of in the desert. Well, it's nighttime. Got the engine and trans out of the truck. Let's go over it. All right, like I said, wasn't a huge fan of them cutting stuff, but they did leave the engine harness intact, the battery harness. Chopped it off. Luckily it's cheap, like I said. And I thought I had a really good transmission harness. And I was like, all right, so they cut some of the, O2 sensor, no big deal. Those are a pain in the ass to get out, right? But wait, what's this little guy? It's in the, it's the inline. Now in two-wheel drive models, we only use one wire to feed power to the O2 sensors. The rest of the wires feed a transfer case that's not here, but come on, guys, be better. But other than that, torque converter spins, it's in park, that works, so that's cool. Rode through the gears, and yeah. So we got a good base to start off with to get the intake tubes, because they decided to crack those. I'm not sure, they do say that they dropped the pan and stuff on their engines, but I think that's more of a B&R thing. I don't think this actual yard did that. The engine definitely doesn't have oil. What was left on the dipstick did look good. As you know, many modern transmissions don't have a dipstick. I'll probably take the little plug out and take a peek in there. There was fluid, definitely the torque converter when I took the little keeper out of there. And yeah, that's about it for the transmission. Surprisingly enough, it's the same exact ones that they use in the Mustangs. And if you have one of these 6Rs, you'll see that you also have a 4x2 transmission in your Mustang. So they keep that, I'm sure, for cheaper manufacturing costs and whatnot. So about the transmission harness, I think I'll just buy another one because I want the lengths good for my harnesses. And I know the connector that goes on there, but then I don't know how long or what was cut off, which is really super silly because on the engine inline, they cut off the right side. So they didn't modify or cut, like here, this is basically where they cut on that transmission harness. Where I don't know is the problem. They just, whatever. It was out of a business truck, something asphalt. They had the pictures of the truck on their site. So hopefully it was nice and maintained, and we'll see your kind of mileages on it. At a minimum, I'm gonna pop the covers off, clean them up, and see what we're dealing with. Pop the pan off because it does look like it needs to be resealed anyway. Do see some seepage, but you know, it's a good idea to pop it off anyway to see what we got going on. And once I, sign myself off of the engine and whatnot, because there's a little nest growing underneath the intake manifold. I might throw the 18 and up manifold that I have sitting in my shed for a few years. Actually, since I bought the engine for the blue car, which has been like 4 years ago, I bought that engine, but have had it swapped for like 2.5 years. Anyway, pop that manifold off, clean it all up, get all the cut off hoses, replace this, get the Dorman aluminum one. I've been burnt by this damn thing way too many times. And pull the covers off and get my Power by the Hour accessories on here straight away. Let's talk about that. These little guys here. So on my 08 that you guys seen on the channel that I swapped in like record time, for the AC stuff, we use F150 tensioner, F150 pulley, and all that good stuff. When I got a belt for it, it only had the 4-rib belt. I was like, cool, I just ran, 4 ribs over there. I didn't know that they actually made, it makes more sense now, that the ribs are smaller. Tensioner is the same, it's just flat, but the balancer is actually different. So luckily we're putting this in an F-150, otherwise I'd probably swap out the balancer for a Mustang one. We'll clean that up, get rid of the battery harness, starter harness, alternator harness, it's all one thing. And go from there. I'm not sure if I'm gonna pop the manifolds off. Don't see a reason to, other than to look at the valves maybe, and those ports. You can reuse the manifold gaskets. We do it all the time when we swap headers, right? So why not? And luckily we live in Arizona, so they'll come off nice. So yeah, that's our donor motor for the 08 F150 swap. And I'm really glad we're doing an automatic. Well, not glad we're doing an automatic, of course, but this still turns with it on the engine stand, and that's gonna be all the clue I'm gonna give you on what I plan to kind of vet the swap process out a little more as far as electronics go. So yeah, stay tuned for that cool little thing I have planned. Also, I giggle every time I see a yard listing and they have this plugged off with the little red plugs. It's a blind hole. No idea why, but it's blind, so there's nothing in there to get in or out. All right, internet, that's enough babbling about a junkyard motor. Say what you want, but that's what we're gonna use. It's got, I actually corrected, they do have the compression on here is 160 to 170 throughout all cylinders, so that's pretty good. 10.5 1 compression engine, not too bad. So, you know, if you like this video, subscribe to see more of the 11th Gen F150 swap, and give that thing a thumbs up on below. We'll see you next time.